Hi everyone, Ian here from Don the Stat. Just doing a bit of a pilot, a bit of a test on something we could do next year, and just looking into other ways in which we can explore Essendon and the key events and the key players. So this is a tier list. Okay, so some of you may be familiar with this. You often see it in different popular culture communities, or anime and things along those lines, and sort of ranking players. It's a different way of ranking things. So got our different tiers here, S through D. S is for super tier, and then A, B, C, D. Just using those as generic terms at the moment. We may be able to refine these in the future. And then there's a did not play tier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be ranking where I think players fit in terms of their performances across 2022. So this is very subjective on my part. It's not a huge amount of analysis has gone into this. I think in future we will be looking at doing a more analytical version of this, but this is just a bit of a test to see how it goes. So what will happen is each player just sort of ranking where I think they fit based on how they performed in 2022. Now, no real particular order, though it has ended up with Andrew McGrath as our number one. So Andrew McGrath, 18 games, 21 disposals. He started as a midfielder, moved back, and I think ending up in the back line is where he's going to be moving forward, especially with the midfielders that we've got now. Obviously, a good option as a break glass to head back into that midfield. But I think giving him a settled position is where he's going to be moving forward. As for his performances in 2022, there were some good games. I think the Petrarca game, the game he played against Melbourne on Petrarca, really stood out to me as a defensively minded midfielder. He wasn't used as that much. Often it's a sort of, midfielder without portfolio almost. I'm going to have him as a B, probably a low B, but we'll see from there. So Andrew McGrath is in the B tier there. Next up is Aaron Francis. Obviously, Francis only played a few games, moved around, and obviously has been traded out. Didn't have a huge impact. I think the Hawthorn game is probably his biggest impact with a couple of goals there. Other than that, thanks for your service, Aaron. I know I was a big fan, but I think overall we rank him in the D tier. Next is Will Snelling, probably one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Obviously, suffered a serious injury coming off the back of his excellent 2021. And when he came back, for a small forward not to kick a goal in the amount of games that he played, which was 8, I think is pretty disappointing. And, he's probably got a lot to do to rebuild that. Obviously, new coach, everyone sort of gets a fresh start. But again, he's in the D tier for me. Tommy Cutler had a few games in the first half of the year, really wasn't cited after that. Again, 2021 played a really good role towards the end in the push to finals, and this year in a team that was performing worse, a player like him can't, his deficiencies can't be hidden as much. And so again, probably in the D tier, probably just above, I would have him above Francis and Snelling. We see there. Next up is Nick Cox, obviously got an injury early. We're all really hyped about what he could be and where he could fit. Because he played so few games, he didn't perform great, but I'm going to have him above the D tier. I'll have him in the C tier, obviously. Hopefully he comes back next year fully fit, and we'll see where he ends up. Next up is Jordan Ridley. Jordan Ridley is a really interesting one for me. He played 20 games. I think he played okay. He's certainly not at the 2020 level or even last year's level. I would have him. I'm going to have him in the B tier. I think he was asked to do a lot, probably above McGrath. Yeah, probably slightly above McGrath. He did have some better games. I think overall the McGrath, he was asked to play some key position roles, which ideally I don't think we have him in moving forward. I think if you look at 2020, we still had Michael Hurley and Cale Hooker playing on the bigger bodies, and Jordan Ridley could be that interceptor. And he hasn't done that the past couple of years. He's been more into that key position role. There are some matchups where he does do really well as that key position role. I think Norton against the Bulldogs is a good matchup for him, and he generally does pretty well on him. But I think getting him more into that intercepting role going forward gets him back up to that A and even pushing into that S tier. We have Jaden Laverty again. I think it was some pretty out there stats that showed that he was, one of the defenders that conceded the most goals. But when you look at the players that he's playing on with his skill set, I think he did better. I think given the roles that he was given, I'd have him up in the B. He was close to A for me because he just consistent performance, and And again, we saw in 2021 what he could do with support. I think, if a BZT or a Zach Reid can come on and take the biggest body, or even a Sam Wiedemann coming into the side, maybe moving into defence, taking the bigger bodies, again, we could get more out of Jaden Laverty. Next up is Archie Perkins. I really liked a lot of what Archie did this year. Up to his injury, a lot of players have second-year blues. I think Archie was just progressing really well. We saw him move into the midfield with some success and some influence. I'm going to have him in the B tier. Again, probably when he came back from his injury, didn't perform as well as we would like, but I think the first half of the year was really promising. And we have James Stewart. Now, obviously, Stewart played both ends. Didn't have the best year. I think the promise is slightly above. I think C is too high. I think I'll have him in the D tier. Above Francis, probably below Cutler there. Obviously, he's got a 2-year deal. Probably going to be playing more of a support role. When some players are out, you're likely to have him back in the side moving forward. But I think he's a good person to have on the list to provide that forward or back support. But as for his 2022, in the D tier there. And we have Michael Hurley. Look, it ended the year on a high for us with Hurley's goal. Only played one game, but the fact he got back at all, and for the stellar career that he had, he's going in the S tier. I know it's not a fact-based one; it's just a feel one. But as you can tell from the year, you're probably not going to have many players in the S tier for this year. So I'm going to put Hurley there just because I think he deserves it. Well done, Michael, and congratulations on your career. Now, Nick Hind, interesting one. I think definitely had a worse year than last year. I'm actually going to put him in the C tier. I don't think that his year was anywhere near as good. And again, the deficiencies in his play were showed up. He's really caught out defensively, and the opposition really worked him out in terms of stopping his run, which was his big thing. When he could get on the run and influence games that way, he played really well, but he was shut out of games too easily. And then when you're a small back and you're shut out of games offensively too easily, you have to play well defensively, and he wasn't doing that either. So he's a C tier for me. Scott Draper, sorry about that. That's something another Essendon podcaster mistake makes a lot. Sam Draper, I'm going to have him in the A tier just because. Partly because of that goal. You win goal of the year. That's a fair effort. I think really pleasing to see across the year that his influence started to improve. His goal kicking, the ability to be a threat forward is huge for him. That means that opposition ruckmen now actually have to start paying more close attention to him moving forward. He's a low A. I just think his influence on games when he was influential was huge. Probably a lot of gaps, but that's what you get with a young developing ruckman. So for where he was last year and what he was able to perform this year, I have him in the A tier. He's probably not overall had an A year, but I'm having him in the A tier. Someone who's definitely in the A tier is Peter Wright. He's close to an S tier. He finished top 5 in the Coleman, kicked 50 goals in a team that finished bottom 4. You obviously had a really good year. He just misses out on ST. Had a few games where he was shut out. I think he went 3 games in the middle with no goals. But one of the other pleasing things was that he would perform in games that we weren't performing well in. He would perform in games against good opponents. Again, going back to the Melbourne game, he took Stephen May to the cleaners. Did the same to Harris Andrews in the Brisbane game. I think he's really grown into being an excellent player. He's much better, I think, than a lot of us thought when he came over, and the fact that he won the best and fairest was great results for his work. So well done, Peter. Dyson Heppel, C tier, really, obviously, I think it's been said a lot. The fact that he was captain really limited selection across the year. You had to find a place for him. Halfback didn't work, so he moved up to the wing, and he was more effective there. But I think overall, you would say that it was not a great year from Dyson, and maybe next year, if the burden of captaincy is off him and he maybe has to play for his place a bit more, or we can use him more efficiently and effectively for specific roles, I think he could be useful going into next year. But C for me, probably just in front of Hind there. Sam Durham, I was really surprised at Sam Durham's performance in the BNF. I thought he would place a lot higher. He's right up there in the BT. He was excellent for me this year. Obviously, still really raw. It's only been in the AFL system for a year and a half. But there's so much potential there. You see, he looks almost perfect for a winner. Good winger, good disposal. Runs really hard up and back. Supports the defense, and is really good overhead. That's a really dangerous player, and I just think with more and more experience, that's going to be one of those gems that we're going to be looking back and saying, how did we get him there? Harrison Jones, I'm having him at the back of C tier. Obviously, another one of those that was affected by injury. Came back, wasn't overly effective. Did a couple of nice things, but generally, was found it really hard to play his role and keep out of or create an effective forward partnership with Peter Wright that he'd done the previous year. Again, another one of those ones that with a full run at it, hopefully gets a better luck next year. Nick Bryan, again, got a taste of it. Again, one of those players that's going to have to work on where they fit in the side, especially when you've got Sam Draper. How do you get Nick Bryan into the side? He's got to work on other aspects of his craft to be that threat forward. I know when he came into the VFL side, he actually played a lot of back and was pretty good at that. And given the increase in size of forwards, a over 200 centimetre defender could be useful if he wanted to develop that part of his game, or the club wanted to develop that part of his game. As a ruckman, he's not getting ahead of Sam Draper at this stage, but just to get a bit more of a taste was useful. Jake Stringer, where do you put Jake Stringer? So again, another season cruelled by injury. Last year, he would have been in the S tier, especially for his second half of the year. This year, I'm going to put him in the B, at the back of BT. He obviously had some games where he was hugely influential, but those were few and far between. And again, just one of those players that you want to get a good run in a side that's playing well. If he doesn't have to do as much as we're often asking him to do as a midfielder or as a forward, then look out, because we'll be actually playing pretty well. Kane Baldwin, I quite liked what I saw of him this year. I think his competitiveness is really good, and I think that he's a really good option going forward. I hope he makes it. I'm really keen on him. Obviously, didn't do a huge amount, but I'm having him in C tier. Just a lot more on potential of what I liked, and just he was asked to ruck, and this is a guy who's had 2 knee reconstructions. So being asked to ruck on that and doing a fairly decent job as an around the ground ruckman, as well as being a target forward. And obviously we saw more of that in the VFL, where he was really effective, and hopefully that can translate to the AFL in the next couple of years. So again, really keen to see where this player heads to next year. Mason Redmond is an A. I think a lot of people were surprised he didn't win the BNF. I will have him ahead of Peter Wright in the A tier. I don't think it was quite an S tier. I think the last few games, post the North Melbourne game, he really didn't fire a shot. But up to that stage, he was superb. Really, really consistent. Broke the lines. Obviously, the goal kicking that started to come into his game last year was continued this year. That's a huge weapon to have just outside 50. Someone who's accurate and can kick that far on the run, just to break open some of those zones that we can often struggle with heading into the forward line. So congratulations on a fantastic year, Mason. Moving from there. Alistair Lord didn't play. Oh, sorry, he did play one game as the sub. I don't think he got on, did he? It was the Hawks game. So Alistair, look, obviously was really young when he was drafted. Let's see how he goes next year. Jake Kelly, one of those players that, again, sort of made it hard to build a team around, because there were some weeks where he would have a really good matchup and you'd want him in the side, and other weeks where you were struggling to find an appropriate matchup. But because of his form, it's hard to drop him, and maybe that's something that they consider moving forward. I think overall he had a B year. I think he's going to be one of those players that probably is going to cop it from a lot of fans, because he's not flashy, or he does make some mistakes, or he's not terribly aggressive with his ball use. So I'm going to have his year as a B. I think he did a lot of good jobs It certainly wasn't the worst. But yeah, obviously, maybe in the future, if we're moving forward, he's not in the best 22. Darcy Parish. So, look, a lot less effective this year. Still average 30 disposals. I think you can put anyone who averaged 30 disposals below a B. There's a lot of question marks about how useful some of those disposals were. I think numerous times we would have been face palming at some of his missed kicks going inside 50, and didn't quite reach the heights of last year. Coming into a contract year, obviously as a free agent, big year for Darcy. We'll see whether he commits to the side next year, and we'll see how that plays out. But for this year, I'd have him as a B, probably ahead of McGrath, below Jordan. There we go. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, he gets a very high B simply because he almost an A for his performances. His performances were excellent, simply only because he came into the side fairly late to perform at that level. If he'd done that for the majority of the year, he's an A. But again, really exciting. I think there were a lot of people who had written off Brandon Zerk-Thatcher mid-season, but to do some of the things that he did, just the way he was able to contort his body to get in the way of passes or deal with bodies that were bigger than him, and I think a bit more aggression with his defensive actions and with his offensive actions, really pleasing. And yeah, again, gives more options heading into 2023. Zach Reed, I think Cox, Jones, Bryan, and Reed, probably all around the same level. You want to see them getting more games. You want to see them performing. You want to see them performing more often in the seniors. Again, lot to work with. Tall player, needs more time. See. Josh Eyre didn't play. Braden Ham, look, I think a lot's been said about Ham. He wasn't well served by the fact that he was constantly the sub. He didn't really get a rhythm. And then, I think unfortunately for him, he got caught out in the Collingwood game and copped a lot for that. But he was all in that game. He was also coming off, 3 or 4 weeks of being the sub and not actually playing. So he wasn't exactly in the form to be able to come on and perform there. So fortunately for Braden, I think there's definitely potential for a player a couple of years ago. Just hasn't worked out. Thanks for your service, Braden. Andrew Phillips is a B. I think the Draper-Phillips combination is a really good one. Really glad that he signed on for next year. We need that extra support as Brian comes on. Solid citizen, really good target up forward as well, which is really pleasing. So well done, Andrew. Matt Guelphy is an A. Outstanding, particularly as the season wore on, and he got better and better as a forward. I think again, before the season, there's a lot of people talking about whether he's best 22. He's made his place in the best 22 this year. Obviously, again, new coach. We'll see how that goes, but to perform at that level probably was above what others expected of him. So one of those players that if you're looking at a premiership side, he's sort of around the bubble of the 22, and he's the sort of player that you want, performing at high levels to put pressure on other players to make sure that no one's not necessarily comfortable with their spot in the side, and are always pushing their performance. Garrett McDonald, obviously, 1 year on the list, didn't play. Thank you for your service. Nick Martin, he is definitely an A. He can go just behind Peter Wright. Again, faded a little bit towards the end, but that first half of the season was outstanding. Obviously, the Geelong game, he was the shining light in a heap of manure. And then just from there, just the class. Again, one of those players that you wonder how they could possibly have not been drafted before now. Picked up, obviously works really hard on his fitness, and he's got the skills both sides. Really interesting to see where they take him next year. Played a couple of centre bounces in that last game and won both of them. So there's a potential there for him to go into the centre and be effective there, as opposed to just being sort of a wing half forward player. Judging by his Instagram post, he's working really hard to get even better for next year. So well done. Cody Brand, again, thanks to Sirs. Probably a bit harsh that he got cut. I think especially if you compare him to Josh Eyre, I think on VFL performances, Brand was developing quicker than Eyre, in my view, but I think Eyre's ceiling has kept him as an opportunity, obviously, at the time of recording, Ayre hasn't been given a position on the list. Patrick Voss, I think we're all super excited to see what he could be. Watch his space. Kyle Langford, sort of like Snelling, came in halfway through the year. Definitely performed better than Snelling did. There were a couple of games, particularly the Brisbane game, I think he really stood out. I'll have him, is he C or B? I think, I really like him, so I want to put him in B, but I think just C. He's definitely capable of more. I think he's a really important player. I still think he's our best winger in that sort of role, but obviously playing as a half forward, he's really effective there as well. So again, hopefully he gets a good preseason and can start 2023 and get a full year in. Tex Wangadeen, I'm really excited about Tex Wangadeen. The club obviously is too. They signed him for 2 years, coming off the SSP supplementary selection. So I obviously again didn't play a whole lot, but he's in this bracket here with the young up and coming players that didn't play a whole lot, but really excited about. Kai McBride again got another year on the list on the Cat B. Seems to be doing some nice things in the VFL. Be interesting to see if he gets a run next year. Massimo D'Ambrosio, he is an A right at the end. Other than one game where he got caught out in the back line, I think he played exceptional games every time he played. And he showed that he's a threat at either end, either with his precision kicking out of the back line or his kicking into the forward line. I think Jono and I took either side of where he should play in our discussions at the end of the year. But it's really great flexibility to have someone of his skill that could be used at either end. So again, really looking forward to see what happens there. Tipper didn't play. Obviously, the talk is that he may come back. Fingers crossed that he does. We'd all love to see him back out there. Alec Waterman, look, I think in a better side, Alec Waterman would be a really good player. He would be allowed to fit. He would be allowed to be he would be allowed to be a player that could just focus on kicking goals. I often think about Tory Dixon for the Bulldogs in the mid 2010s. A player that's only got one or two tricks but does them really well, and teams that can cover his weaknesses would be an exceptional player like him. So if he was playing in a top 4 side, he probably could be a 40 goal a year forward just because of his forward craft and his ability to kick goals. So unfortunately for Alec, I just don't think it's his time at Essendon. But again, I think the last year's game against West Coast, I think that was a great result for him, and yeah, I think it's just a great story for him to actually get onto the AFL field at all. Jai Menzies, again, no picture for Jai. There was none on the Essendon website. So again, probably just a bit below Tex. My question marks over Jai are about his tackling. Obviously, he got given another year, but next year there's likely going to be more competition for small forward spots as well. So if AMT comes back, and then obviously Tex after his injury, and then Davies and even Mankara maybe on there. So there's going to be a lot of competition for small forward spots. He's definitely got some skills. Seems to have a really good forward craft. Again, I think the thing that will allow him to become a really good player going forward is his ability to put on that defensive pressure. That's where I'm leaning towards. Tom Hurd, again, I think there was a point mid-year where I think he was performing really well in the VFL and the AFL team wasn't performing, that he could have been brought in and given a shot. Disappointed that he didn't get a chance. But again, thank you for your service. Devon Smith, obviously injury curtailed, probably made the right decision to retire. I'll put him up here just because of the Hawthorn game. Just coming, when he was obviously suffering from injury, but managed to get out there when the club really needed him. So that was a really great end. I think that really highlights the sort of player Devon Smith was. We're gonna miss his yelling at the umpires, I think, or maybe not too much with all the 50-metre penalties. But again, thank you for your service, Devon. Jai Caldwell, I think he towards the end when he found his role, that defensive midfielder, the job he did on Lachie Neale was outstanding. He's right at the top of the B tier for me, not quite A tier. Probably didn't get the opportunities as that centre square midfielder until right at the end. He's probably in that second string brigade, but he's someone who could move into that first rotation role pretty easily. Zach Merritt. Now, Zach Merritt, I think, is an interesting one. He potentially could be in the S tier. I think his year's probably been a bit underrated. If you're finishing top 10 in the Brownlow, then you're probably a quite high level player. I think I'm going to have him at the A tier, probably just after Peter Wright. I think I could see a case for him being in the S tier based on that. Just another Zach year where he performs at a very high level. Again, there's some question marks over whether he's able to do it every game. But obviously, he's the front runner to be captain for next year. And if he is captain, it will be interesting to see how that affects his play, whether he looks to become more selfless and bring others into the game, or whether the club tries to use him more on the outside. I really liked him coming off the half-forward line. There were a couple of games where he did start to kick goals as that rotation with Stringer. Stringer would start in the middle, and then Zach would rotate in after the centre bounce. So I want to see that there. Ben Hobbs, again, really great first year at the club. I have him just behind Archie. I think Archie did a little bit more with the centre square work, and then Ben was able to do. But I think Ben showed a lot more than we were expecting. So he obviously came to the club as a hard at it centre square midfielder. I think he showed enough forward craft to suggest that he's got a bit more to his bag of tricks than just really really hardworking centre square midfielder. So again, that's really important moving forward. It means you can rotate people through, have roles, and they're not dead weight when they're not in their preferred position. So that's really good. And then finally, Dylan Shield. I think if you were measuring the first half of the year up to the Sydney game, he'd be C. And if you were measuring his second half of the year, you'd be looking at A, where he's one of the best centre square midfielders in the comp. So I'm going to split the difference and go with B. And I think he'll go there. Just after, just before second. I think overall Caldwell probably had a Betty. No, actually, that's not fair. Yeah, Shield right at the top of B. I think second half of the year was outstanding. First half of the year, not great. So I think that's where you end up with a B. So that's all the players from the 2022 list. You may agree, you may disagree. That's fine. You can have a go at this yourself. I'll post a link to this tier maker, and you can have a go at yourself and maybe share that with me on Twitter. We'll look if this goes well. As you can tell, I'm sort of doing this off the cuff. There's no preparation. That's why there's so many ums and ahs. But we will see what the response is to this. And if the response is good, then it's likely that we'll come back to this at the start of 2023 and sort of ranking where we think players fit on the list going forward. Other than that, thank you and see you next time. Go Dons.